In this video, we're going to talk about how to factor polynomials that require two steps, and it's just going to be any combinations of different factoring that we've seen before. Usually, these are going to start with factoring out a common monomial first, unless you get into some more complex algebra classes. So, this first example, as always, like we've been saying in all these videos, how do we simplify it at first? Can we factor a common monomial first and get to an easier method of factoring? And then whether we can or not, we always want to just try to recognize what types of factoring we're dealing with and go from there. And we want to simplify as much as possible to figure out how many different factors we need. So this first example, we've got x squared y minus 49y. So when we first look at some of these examples, nothing really jumps out usually as what our main factoring method is going to be, because we have to clean it up a little bit first. We have to do that common monomial factored out to begin with. So if you see something that you don't recognize, look at each term and see if there's something common that you can factor out front. So in this case, we have an x and a y in the first term, a coefficient 49, which I recognize as a perfect square, and y. So both of them have a y. We're going to factor out a y out front. So once we factor something out front, we're kind of just setting that aside and looking at what we have left and factoring that, and then bringing that common monomial with whatever we factor out. So now I notice x squared minus 49, like I noticed before, it was a perfect square with a negative in front, no middle value or no middle term, and an x squared there that looks like a difference of two squares. So we get y times x plus 7 times x minus 7. Our second example, 3x squared plus 18x minus 21. So when you see this, first thought might be it's trinomial, a greater than 1 for us to factor, and that's a little bit more work than most of our examples for factoring. But if we look a little closer, we notice that each term is a multiple of 3, so we can factor a 3 out front. And again, we just kind of set that factor aside and we just look at what's left over. Well, now this is a much nicer trinomial to work with. We have an a value of 1, it's just x squared. And so we can just do our pretty simple factoring. I know my factors of 7 are only 1 and 7, but because negative 7 is negative, then between the 1 and 7, one of them has to be positive, one negative, and a positive 7 plus negative 1 is a positive 6. So the parentheses there factors to x plus 7 times x minus 1 times that 3 that we pulled out at the beginning.